The world had long painted them as eternal rivals, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, two colossal figures in football history whose names were uttered with awe and admiration in every corner of the globe. Their rivalry spanned over a decade, with fans divided, stats compared, and media fueling the fire. From El Clasico showdowns to Ballon d'Or battles, every touch they made on the field became a moment etched in memory. But behind the whirlwind of fame, competition, and debate there was something rarely seen, something more human, more profound. This isn't a story of rivalry. It's a story of unexpected unity, deep compassion, and a boy whose innocent wish would bring about something the world had never imagined in a modest neighborhood of Lisbon. A boy named Tiago was bravely fighting a rare and aggressive illness. He was just 10, but his spirit was powerful, powered not by medicine alone, but by dreams, hope, and love for football. Every time he watched Ronaldo sprint past defenders or Messi dance through a sea of legs, with that left foot of magic, he felt alive. Football was his escape, his source of joy, his strength. More than anything, he admired both legends equally. It's not for their rivalry, but for their brilliance and the happiness they brought to the world. His hospital room was covered in posters, Messi on one wall, Ronaldo on the other. He didn't pick sides. To him, they were two heroes playing the same game with different magic. As his condition worsened, his mother tried everything to keep his spirits alive. And so, with trembling hands, she helped him write a letter. Not just any letter, but a heartfelt message addressed to both Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. In that letter, Tiago didn't ask for money or gifts. He asked for time. Just a few moments with the men who gave him hope. It was a long shot, a wish that felt almost impossible. But sometimes, the most improbable prayers are the ones destiny hears the loudest. The letter, passed through volunteers and social workers, eventually made its way to the people around Ronaldo. Most celebrity mail gets filtered, screened, and never reaches the intended hands. But this one did. Perhaps it was fate. Perhaps it was something divine. Ronaldo was in the middle of intense training sessions, preparing for an upcoming international fixture. Surrounded by agents, coaches, and advisors, his mind was focused. But that letter, Tiago's words, broke through the noise. It wasn't just a request. It was a window into a young soul who had chosen hope over despair. Ronaldo read it silently, then again and again. For the first time in a long while, he didn't think about tactics, titles, or media. He thought about what it meant to be looked up to have someone believe that your existence gave them strength. And in that moment, Ronaldo made a decision that no manager or media executive expected. He wasn't just going to visit the boy, he was going to bring someone with him. Someone whose presence would complete Tiago's dream. He would bring Messi. Cristiano Ronaldo had made his decision. But it wasn't one he could carry out alone. To fulfill the boy's ultimate dream, he needed the help of the only other man. Who shared that rare place in Tiago's heart? Lionel Messi. Their relationship had always been professional from a distance. Fierce competitors, respectful in public, but never close. They had exchanged handshakes on the pitch, nodded during award ceremonies, and spoken through their game rather than through words. The world loved the idea of their rivalry, but the truth was more nuanced to masters of their craft, both committed to excellence, both shaped by very different journeys. And now, in a moment far removed from trophies or titles, Ronaldo was about to reach out not as a competitor, but as a fellow human being. He sat alone in his villa, the letter from Tiago resting on the table beside him. The room was quiet, but his thoughts weren't. Would Messi even respond? Would he be open to this? Would it seem strange or worse, staged? Ronaldo wasn't one for doubt, but this was unfamiliar territory. Still, something deeper inside told him this wasn't about football. It was about something bigger, something bigger. That transcended rivalry and reputation. He picked up his phone and searched for a number he hadn't used in years. It wasn't even under Messi's name. It's just a first initial, an old habit from when both were careful about privacy. He stared at the screen for a moment, then pressed the call button. The line rang once, twice, then a click. Cristiano? The voice came calm and unmistakably familiar. Ronaldo exhaled. "Leo, I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "No, not at all," Messi replied, slightly surprised. "What's going on?" Ronaldo didn't hesitate. He explained Thiago's story, his illness, his letter, his dream. He spoke not with rehearsed charm, but with sincerity, the kind that came from witnessing the raw emotion behind a young boy's words. Messi listened quietly, absorbing every detail. There was a long pause after Ronaldo finished. Then Messi spoke, his voice soft but steady. "Tell me when and where. I'll be there." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't sentimental. It was simple, direct, and deeply genuine. There was no hesitation, no ego, no discussion about sponsors or managers, or timing. Just two men deciding to grant a dream. Over the next few days, their teams coordinated in absolute secrecy. No press, no posts, no leaks. It had to be quiet, intimate. The hospital was contacted discreetly. The staff, overwhelmed by emotion, prepared the room with care. Thiago was told only that a surprise was coming. He had no idea what kind of surprise it would be, certainly not the kind that would bring together the two greatest footballers of all time. Walking side by side into a hospital room that had too often seen tears and silence, and yet, as the day approached, something remarkable unfolded between Ronaldo and Messi. In their quiet planning, brief voice notes, and mutual updates, a thread of mutual respect began to form. They joked lightly about old matches, shared memories of tough games, and laughed about how the world had always wanted them to fight. But now, in service of something far more meaningful, they were united not as athletes, but as men with hearts. Open to the call of compassion? The day before the visit, Ronaldo sent a voice message to Messi. "You know," he said with a chuckle, "the media would explode if they knew we were doing this." Messi responded with a smile on his tone. "Let them explode. This one's for Thiago." And with that, the stage was quietly set not for a match, not for a press conference, but for a boy's dream to come to life in a way no one could have ever scripted. The morning air was cool. The sky was painted with gentle clouds drifting lazily across Lisbon's horizon. Inside the children's hospital, there was a different kind of energia, quiet buzz, feeling that something rare and beautiful was about to happen. Nurses moved swiftly, but softly. Doctors whispered with one another. In the room where Thiago lay had been decorated with care and heart. There were colorful balloons in the corners, miniature goalposts set up beside his bed, and signed jerseys from various players hanging on the wall. Thiago knew something was happening, something exciting, but he had no idea just how magical the moment ahead would be. He was sitting up, a bit tired from treatment, but full of curiosity. His mother smiled at him gently, hiding her nervous excitement. "Are you ready for your surprise?" she asked, brushing his hair back. Thiago's eyes lit up. "Is it football?" he asked. She nodded. "It's better." Downstairs, in a private, secured entrance of the hospital, two of the most recognizable faces in world sports were arriving quietly. No paparazzi, no entourage. Just Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, dressed in plain clothes, wearing caps pulled low, sneakers and soft smiles. For perhaps the first time in their adult lives, they weren't here as icons, but as men answering the wish of a child who simply believed in both of them equally. They entered the elevator in silence, the gravity of the moment sinking in. Ronaldo glanced at Messi and smirked. "This is a different kind of final," he said. Messi chuckled softly. "The most important one, maybe?" When they reached the floor, the staff gently opened the door to Thiago's room, and in walked two. Legends side by side. Thiago froze. For a few seconds, there was nothing but silence. His eyes widened, his mouth parted slightly in disbelief. He blinked once, twice sure he was dreaming. But it was real. Cristiano Ronaldo, the powerful, confident forward whose goals he had memorized, stood just feet away. Beside him, Lionel Messi, the magician whose every touch seemed guided by fate, smiled kindly, his hands tucked into his pockets. The boy burst into tears not from sadness, but from overwhelming joy. "It's you. It's both of you," whispered, his voice trembling. Ronaldo moved first, kneeling beside his bed, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. "Thiago," he said warmly, "we heard you've been fighting like a champion." Messi came to the other side, pulling a small gift from his backpack. "And champions deserve surprises," he added, handing over a wrapped box with a grin. Thiago opened it slowly, hands still shaking. Inside was a custom-made football half designed in Portugal's colors, the other in Argentina's, with both of their signatures, and a message that read, "Together, for you." The boy laughed through his tears, holding the ball close to his chest. "This is the best day of my life," he whispered. What followed was more magical than any match. Ronaldo and Messi sat with him for over an hour. They kicked a soft ball around the room, even letting Thiago dribble past them on his bed as he giggled uncontrollably. They asked him questions about his favorite goals, his dreams, and what position he wanted to play when he got better. He answered with all the energy he could muster, animated and joyful, forgetting for a brief time about the tubes and machines. Surrounding him, they posed for photos, not for publicity, but for memory. They signed his wall. Ronaldo gave him a pair of boots he had worn during a European final, whispering, "These are my lucky ones. Now they're yours." Messi took off the hoodie he was wearing and handed it to Thiago. "Keep this. Yours now, for strength on the hard days." But the moment that stayed with everyone wasn't the gifts or the laughter. It was when Thiago, mustering all the courage he had, looked at both men and asked, "Why did you come together? I thought you weren't friends." Ronaldo looked at Messi and smiled, then turned back to Thiago. "Because some things are bigger than football," he said gently. "You reminded us of that." Messi nodded. "We've played against each other for years, but today we came to play for you." And in that little hospital room, surrounded by laughter, tears, and love, the world's greatest rivalry melted. Aware, placed by something far greater, the shared humanity of two legends. And the heart of a boy who brought them together, * the visit, meant to last only a few minutes, turned into hours that no one wanted to end. The small hospital room had transformed into a sacred space, kind of emotional sanctuary where football didn't matter as a game, but as a language that spoke straight to the soul. Thiago, frail yet shining with joy, had become the center of a world that now included not only the people who cared for him daily, but also the two greatest players to ever grace the pitch, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, who now sat on either side of him as if they were his lifelong friends. There was no camera crew, no live coverage, only soft lights, quiet voices, and raw emotion. The sound of their laughter blended with the quiet beeping of hospital machines. They played a game with a soft foam football, letting Thiago score on them, each goal celebrated with cheers and over-the-top celebrations. Ronaldo fell to the floor, pretending to be defeated, while Messi clapped wildly, raising Thiago's hand like a champion. It wasn't an act. It wasn't scripted. These two men, often seen as untouchable gods of the sport, were fully present in that moment, not as icons, but as kind, empathetic human beings who had traveled across countries not for fame but for the joy of one small boy. A nurse, wiping her eyes quietly in the corner, whispered to another, "I've never seen anything like this." The staff, sworn to silence about the visit, watched from a distance, moved by the authenticity of what was unfolding. Who had seen Thiago through the worst of nights, remarked softly, "He hasn't laughed like this in months." Then came the moment that no one expected. Ronaldo stood, reached into a duffel bag, and pulled out a wooden box. Inside it was a pristine pair of his signature mercurial boots, the ones he wore during one of his most iconic Champions League performances. But what made them extraordinary was the message he had written across the sole in gold ink. For Thiago, the real warrior, Cristiano. He knelt down and helped Thiago slip them on, even though they were far too big for his small feet. "These are my lucky boots," Ronaldo said, looking him in the eyes. "They've scored against the best defenders in the world, but now they belong to the bravest player I've ever met." Messi, quietly watching, reached into his own bag and pulled out a framed jersey, the very one he had worn during a legendary El Clasico match. It still had grass stains from the pitch. He handed it to Thiago and smiled. This shirt has seen the toughest battles, Messi said. But the fight you're fighting every day is harder than anything I've ever done. Belongs to you now. Thiago held the jersey like it was made of gold, running his fingers over the fabric as if trying to memorize the feeling. His voice quivered as he whispered, "Thank you, I'll never forget this." What followed next would become the most unforgettable moment of all. Ronaldo, turning toward Messi, spoke in a way that silenced the entire room. "We've competed for years, and we've pushed each other harder than anyone else ever could. People called us rivals. Today, I'm proud to stand beside you, Leo, not as a competitor, but as a brother in purpose." Messi looked at him, his expression calm but deeply moved. "We've shared a story that only we can understand. But this is the most important. Paige, there were no crowds, no trophies, no cameras. Just that one boy, those two men, and a truth that couldn't be denied. Greatness is not only measured in goals, records, or awards. Sometimes it's measured in presence, humility, and love." As they stood to leave, Thiago reached for both of their hands, holding one of each in his small fingers. "You're my heroes," he said, "but today, I think you became friends." Ronaldo and Messi exchanged a look, and for the first time, there was no rivalry in their eyes, only respect, and something even deeper. A quiet nod sealed the moment. Outside, the world spun, as usual. But in that room, something historic had occurred, not on a pitch, but in a place where dreams don't often get second chances. That day, two giants came not to be worshipped, but to give. And in doing so, they discovered a part of themselves that even glory could never reach. As the sun began to set over Lisbon, casting a golden hue over the hospital's windows, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi quietly exited the building, leaving behind not just signed memorabilia, but a memory stitched into the very soul of a young boy named Thiago. Their visit had been private, quiet, and deeply personal. The world had no clue that two of its most famous athletes had just united, not in front of flashing cameras or roaring fans, but in the dim light of a hospital room to fulfill the dream of a child whose time on earth was uncertain. Thiago slept peacefully that night for the first time in weeks, his cheeks still flushed with happiness, one of Ronaldo's boots tucked beside him on the bed, Messi's jersey draped gently over his shoulders like a cloak of courage. His mother sat quietly nearby, staring at the two items as if they were sacred relics, tears flowing freely not from pain, but from a deep, overwhelming sense of gratitude. In the silence of that hospital room, there was healing that no medicine could ever provide. But Ronaldo wasn't done. That night, as he sat in his Lisbon apartment, looking at the photo he had taken with Thiago, something stirred inside him. He'd met thousands of fans, signed countless autographs, but this was different. This felt like a calling. He picked up his phone, recorded a quick voice message, and sent it to Messi. "Leo," Ronaldo said in a calm tone, "I've been thinking that we can't just leave it at that. What if we did something more? Something lasting?" Messi responded the next morning with a simple voice note. "Whatever you're thinking, count me in." Within days, Ronaldo began making arrangements. He contacted his team and explained his idea. He wanted to bring Thiago to Spain for something unforgettable. Not just another visit, but a private, once-in-a-lifetime experience. He coordinated with Messi's side, and together, they created what would become a moment Thiago and the world would never forget. A week later, under the guise of a medical checkup, Thiago and his mother were flown by private jet to Barcelona. Thiago was confused, but excited. He looked out the window of the jet, wondering what was happening. When they landed, a private car took them to a small, serene training facility on the outskirts of the city, away from the noise of media or fans. They're standing in the middle of a freshly cut field, a Ronaldo and Messi waiting for him, with smiles that lit up the pitch. As the car door opened and Thiago stepped out, his jaw dropped. "You again," he gasped, eyes wide. Ronaldo jogged over and lifted him in the air. "Told you we'd see each other again," he said with a grin. "Mess." I walked up behind him, holding a small kit bag. "Ready for your match, champ?" he asked. What followed was pure magic. On a warm Spanish afternoon, with the breeze carrying the scent of grass and glory, Thiago played a private football match with his two heroes. They divided into teams Ronaldo and Thiago versus Messi and took turns passing, shooting, and laughing. They teased each other playfully, argued over silly fouls, and cheered as Thiago scored again and again. Ronaldo celebrated each of his goals like they were World Cup winners, sliding on the grass and shouting, "See you!" while Messi lifted him on his shoulders and spun him around. Even the coaching staff, who were quietly watching from afar, couldn't hold back smiles. It wasn't just a game, it was a lesson in joy, unity, and the purity of sport. After the match, they sat together on the grass, sweaty and breathless, drinking water and enjoying the golden hour. Thiago looked at both men and said something that caught them off guard. "Do you think people will believe this really happened?" he asked softly. Messi smiled. "Sometimes the best moments don't need to be believed, they just need to be lived," Ronaldo added. "Let the world argue over who's better. We know what matters." And in that moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long shadows across the field, they weren't just a trio of footballers and a fan. They were three souls who had met at a perfect crossroads where legacy met love, and greatness took a knee in honor of innocence. In the weeks that followed their unforgettable match on the quiet Barcelona pitch, the world remained blissfully unaware of what had transpired. There were no posts, no leaks, and no carefully curated press releases. Everything about that day remained sealed between Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, and young Thiago. It was their moment, their shared miracle, and they intended to protect its purity. But in the silence that followed, something began to bloom, an idea. A vision that began with Ronaldo's voice message and quickly turned into something much greater than either legend had ever envisioned. Ronaldo couldn't stop thinking about Thiago, not just the boy's courage, but the light he carried despite his pain. That light had done something extraordinary. It had brought together two of football's most iconic figures in an act of compassion and humanity. And Ronaldo knew that kind of magic couldn't be wasted. Late one evening, while reviewing his foundation's upcoming charity initiatives, Ronaldo paused. He opened his phone, stared at a photo of Thiago from their private match, arms raised, mouth open in mid-laughter, with Messi and Ronaldo grinning behind him. That image alone was enough to convince him that this couldn't be a one-time gesture. It needed to become something permanent. He picked up his phone and called Messi. "Leo," Ronaldo said, his tone more serious than before, "I've been thinking about what we did, about Thiago, that feeling we had that diet can't end. What if we created something for more kids like him? Something bigger than both of us?" Messi didn't hesitate. "I've been waiting for you to say that," he replied, in the weeks that followed. Both men took personal control over the creation of a project that would mark the most human chapter of their careers. A charitable foundation dedicated to children battling life-threatening illnesses, with a focus on using sport, mentorship, and emotional support as healing tools. It wouldn't just carry their names, it would carry their purpose. The Ronaldo Messi Foundation was born quietly, deliberately, without flashy headlines or sponsorship deals. Its mission was simple: to bring moments of joy, hope, and courage to children facing the unthinkable. And at its heart would be a football academy, one that was unlike any other in the world. This academy would offer free training, therapy through sport, and education to children with chronic illnesses. Medical professionals would work side by side with football coaches. The focus wouldn't be on building the next superstar, it would be on building strength, confidence, and joy in children who needed it most. No child would be turned away for their condition. Every child would be treated like a champion. Ronaldo and Messi personally funded the construction of the first center. Choosing a quiet plot of land in southern Spain, they visited regularly, never with photographers, always with sincerity. They handpicked staff, chose the colors of the uniforms, and even designed the logo together, two silhouetted players standing back to back, holding up a ball with a small star inside, it representing every child who deserved to shine. But the most touching moment came during the planning of the academy's opening ceremony. When the board asked who should be the first honorary member, Ronaldo and Messi looked at each other and smiled. "Thiago," they said in unison. By now, Thiago's condition had stabilized, his treatments had begun to work, and he had slowly regained strength. When he received the invitation, his mother read it aloud to him, tears falling onto the envelope. On the day of the opening, Thiago stood at the academy gates, no longer the fragile boy in a hospital bed, but a symbol of resilience. He walked through those doors flanked by his two heroes, wearing a special kit embroidered with his name and the number 10. That number, once worn by both legends, now belonged to him. Ronaldo delivered a speech that day, raw and unscripted. "Football has given us everything," he said, looking over the sea of young faces. "But today we give it back." Messi followed. "These kids don't need to be the next us. They just need to be the best version of themselves. That's what greatness really means." And as the children took to the field, running and laughing with coaches and volunteers, something profound settled in the air. Ow. This was no longer about Messi or Ronaldo. It was about the legacy they were building, not through goals or trophies, but through the lives they touched. Their rivalry had fueled stadiums, debates, and headlines for over a decade. But now, through this shared purpose, they were writing a new story, one not of competition, but of compassion. And in doing so, they proved that even the most celebrated athletes in the world could become champions of something far greater than the game. Years passed, and the world of football gradually evolved. New stars emerged, new rivalries blossomed, and debates shifted toward younger names. Yet the legacy of Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi remained timeless, etched into the sport's DNA like an ancient legend. But there was one part of their journey that had quietly grown into something even more powerful than their goals or golden boots, something few media outlets covered, something that rarely made it to the front page. It was the quiet revolution they had sparked through empathy, through purpose, through a boy named Thiago, who had once dreamed of meeting his two heroes. The Ronaldo Messi Foundation had become more than just a charitable organization. It had become a sanctuary for children whose lives had been disrupted by illness and hardship. The academy, once just a humble idea, now had branches in multiple countries. Each one offered not just football training, but emotional support, medical access, creative learning, and most importantly, a community that nurtured dreams instead of letting them fade away. Cristiano and Messi, though now retired from professional play, remained deeply involved. They took turns visiting the centers, attending sessions with the children, watching over matches, and even helping design new training drills for coaches. Whenever one of them couldn't attend, they sent personalized video messages to the kids, Ronaldo flashing his signature wink, Messi offering his soft-spoken encouragement. There was no fanfare, no paparazzi. It's only authenticity. And as for Thiago, his transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The boy, once bound to a hospital bed, now stood tall and strong. Against all odds, he had recovered, not just physically, but emotionally, carrying within him a wisdom far beyond his years. The doctors had called it a medical mystery, but those who knew the full story simply called it a miracle, born of love and hope. Thiago didn't go on to become a professional footballer. That had never been the point. Instead, he became something even more extraordinary. He became the academy's first full-time coach, trained from within the very system that had once saved him. He wore the same jersey he had received on the academy's opening day, though now it had faded with age and pride. His sessions were always the loudest with laughter, the most filled with joy. The kids adored him, not because he was the best athlete, but because he understood them. He had lived their fears. He'd walked their path during the foundation's 10th anniversary ceremony, an event held privately for staff, families, and children. Ronaldo and Messi stood side by side once again. The event wasn't about them, but they were honored nonetheless, with quiet claps and heartfelt hugs rather than roaring applause. When asked to say a few words, Ronaldo stepped forward first, his voice steady, filled with emotion. "We've lifted trophies, broken records, and played in front of millions," he said, "but nothing compares to this. This place, these kids, and the lives we've seen transformed, This is the true measure of greatness. Messi followed, taking the mic in his usual soft-spoken manner. We were once seen as opposites. One powerful, the other graceful. One fire, the other calm. But look around, he said, gesturing to the children, the staff, and Thiago in the front row. This unity is what football should always be about. Not rivalry, but impact, connection, humanity. The crowd stood in silence, overcome by the magnitude of what had been built, not a monument of stone, but a legacy of hearts. They had changed the way people viewed heroes as the sun set on that warm evening. Casting golden light across the academy grounds, Thiago stood and walked to the stage. He didn't prepare a speech. He didn't need to. He looked at the two men who had once been giants on his bedroom wall, then reached for their hands. I was supposed to meet my heroes for 5 minutes, he said, looking out at the crowd. Instead, they gave me a future. And now, we give that future to others. Ronaldo smiled, squeezing his hand. Messi nodded, visibly moved, and as the three of them stood together, no longer a sick child and two athletes, but equals connected by destiny, it became clear that some victories are never televised. Some goals are never scored in a stadium. But they are felt in the lives we uplift, in the hearts we heal, and in the hope we pass on. The rivalry between Ronaldo and Messi may have defined an era, but their compassion, their unity, and their quiet acts of humanity had redefined what it means to be truly legendary.